Hello and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. How are you all? David's still ill. David, you still ill?
Yeah.
He's still ill. He's got a cold and his ear infection still hasn't gone away. I've got a job for you to do tomorrow, David.
Oh, why are you telling me now in front of camera?
Please change this Merry Christmas everyone sign.
No.
Oh, I've got to change it. I was going to change it for Cozy Reading Night and I just never got around to it. My book corner is a mess. It's so disgusting. Look at the bloody state of those shelves there. This is pleasant, but down there is just a complete mess. Today is my March TBR. It feels super early to be doing my March TBR, but there are only 28 days that hath in February. So this is going up 2 days before the end of February, and yeah, I just thought it would be a great idea and a great opportunity to show you what I'm planning on reading in March. So there are, I wonder if there are any, yeah there are. So I've read only female authors throughout February, in the month of February, so I'm now back to being able to read male authors, but there are only 2 in this whole world. So I got really ahead of my reading goal in February. I think at the moment I'm 6 books ahead of schedule, which is amazing. I'm planning on reading 100 books this year. That was my goal. Last year I set it at 150, I didn't quite make it. But this year I thought I'd set it at 100 and then give myself an opportunity to read some of those longer books, or just to read longer books, which is something I didn't really allow myself to do last year, which seems bonkers because like when you're reading you should just be allowed to read whatever you want. So I thought this would be a great month to read some of those bigger books because I've got no pressure at all to get any books finished because I'm 6 books ahead of my schedule already. But before I start on the bigger books, I want to do a bit of a mop up. So at the moment on Goodreads, I think I'm reading like 8 books at once, which I like. I don't mind reading multiple books. Like normally I have an audiobook on the go, a non-fiction on the go, and a fiction on the go, and probably a short stories collection. But like at the moment I've got 8 and it's just a bit mental and I just want to like cut it down a bit. So I'm going to do a mop up for as much as I can on the way into March, and then I'll move on to some of the books I've got there. So I'll show you the books that I'm planning on mopping up. Then I'll talk about the books that I'm reading for my book clubs, and then I will show you the big books that I've got planned. Now there are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 books here, which obviously I'm not planning on reading the whole of them during March, but there's some of the books that I can pick from. Let's have a mouthful of tea before we get into it. I've got, look at this tiny little cup. I have a little tiny cup of chamomile tea before I go to bed. I'm filming this. I was going to say really late on Saturday night. I've just looked at the clock. It's 10:10. It's not that late at all. But I have quite a small cup of chamomile tea, which then is quite concentrated and really sends me off into a snooze. This is Bedtime Infusion by Sainsbury's. It's like £1.50 for 20 tea bags. Really, really good. Really lovely. Very, very nice. So anyway, 3 minutes into this video, I haven't even shown you one book. Let's get on with it. The first one is a hangover book from January, as in I was reading this in January and then stopped because it was written by a male author and I didn't want to read any male authors in February. So this is Fat Gay Vegan by Sean O'Callaghan, and the tagline here is eat, drink and live like you give a shit. I'm already reading this. I'm already sort of halfway through it. It is a book about veganism, and Sean has an Instagram account called The Fat Gay Vegan, which I follow, and wanted to read this book, so I bought it. I am enjoying it. I also in January read a book called Veganuary, which was written by the Veganuary team, and I feel like that was much more of a kindly, nicely approach. Sean's approach is sort of like, you should be vegan and that is the end of it, whereas the Veganuary book that I was reading was sort of like, these are the options you can do and this is what you can do to help yourself out. Minnie, you're being rather cute, but there isn't really much of that in here. This is very much like, these are the vegan facts. I'm scared Minnie around those hot teas. These are the vegan facts and you should be vegan. But I mean, I was enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to getting back into it. So yeah, we'll be finishing that off for sure. There's such a mess everywhere. I've got nowhere to put these books. I put them on there, the skybox, which is normally Minnie's bed place. I've also just recently started like 12 pages into The Button Box by Lynn Knight. This is the story of women in the 20th century told by told via the clothes that they wear. I'm literally really like the first chapter, which is about mourning clothes, and how the colour black went from being a colour that was associated with mourning and then turned into sort of like a glamorous option in the 20s. I believe it's told through buttons. So the first chapter is called the jet button, from mourning to glamour. So yeah, and then the next chapter is called the blackcurrant button. So we're sort of told what's going on via the button. I don't know for definite because I've only read the first chapter, but I'm enjoying it so far. And then this is a novel that I'm reading that I'm really enjoying. It's called The Word for Women is Wilderness, a novel by Abby Andrews. This is really original and unlike anything I've really read before. So this is sort of like a novel, but also part memoir from Abby's perspective. So this follows a young girl, Erin, who's 19, who just decides that she wants to travel to Greenland, to the North Pole, and she sort of gets this happens like, so she talks about wanting to do it, and literally by about page 8 she's on the ferry to Iceland. And yeah, it's sort of told in a journal like way. She inserts some scenery, some pictures and drawings of birds and things she's seen, and also within it, and this has happened a few times now, which I really like, is a sort of script like play like thing in between. Firstly it was her and the girl that she met on the boat to Iceland, and then later on was her and some of the guys that she was getting a lift via dog sleigh on when she was in Greenland. But yeah, really interesting. Like, this is only 56 pages in, and like she's in Greenland, so I'm wondering what's happening. Also, there's a really funny bit where she's on her period when she's there, and when she was sort of like and she's got a moon cup and she's trying to dispose of this blood, and she's thinking there's literally nowhere for me to put it, everywhere's white, like wherever I put it someone's gonna see it. And the person she's with, like, oh, like, don't worry about the polar bears, like I'm sure they won't really be after it, like because if they could smell your blood then maybe we would see them by now. And she was like, oh my god, I hadn't even thought about the fucking polar bears. So yeah, really, like, this is funny and touching, and yeah, really, I'm really enjoying it. So very good. I'm also reading a short story collection called Sour Heart by Jenny Zhang. This is a short story collection set in the 90s, and it's about Chinese and Taiwanese people who moved to New York in the 90s to make a better life for themselves. So the first one is about a family who are so extremely poor, living in such awful poverty, literally moving from house share to shitty apartments back into a house share because they, like, their parents are really struggling to hold down jobs and everything's so badly paid. And then the second story is from another girl's point of view, and each story is sort of interlinked in a really tiny way. So the second girl, the second story, she talks about Christina and her mum and dad, who are the people from the first story, coming and living in her lounge for 6 months while they find their feet, because they are the Christina's dad went to school with the girl whose new story is about dad as well. So yeah, although that second story ended in a really awful, or like just awful rape scene told from like, I can't even really describe it, like 3 young girls raping a young lad, but also one of the other girls also being involved, like being part of the section, like being sexually assaulted whilst that was going on as well. So oh my god, it was just awful. I will continue to read it though, because I did really enjoy the first story. The first story I found was quite, although it was really sad and about poverty and this poor family, it had quite dark humour in it and I really liked it. But the second story, my god, it was fucking uncomfortable and awful. But I am going to continue to read and see how I get on, because I really like the idea of this, like how it's set in a certain time and everyone's story is slightly links. So yeah, we will continue to do that. And then the last one I've got to mop up with is 100 Nasty Women of History by Hannah Jewell. I say I'm going to mop up with this. This is one I sort of like dipping in and out of. I'm on number 41 at the moment and this is 100, so I'm not quite halfway yet. But I sort of pick it up and like read one every so often and quite enjoy it, and it's going quite well for me that way, so I will continue to read it that way. Whether or not I finish it in March, who knows. And then the 2 books that I'll be reading for my book clubs, my work book club, we are reading Animal Farm by George Orwell. This is a book that I read many years ago when I was at university. I borrowed sorry David, my ex-boyfriend's copy and read it, and I don't feel like I took in much more than it being a story about animals. So now, obviously I knew at the time it was based on like Russian politics and stuff, but now I feel like I wonder if that will take a whole new sort of meaning for me. So that I'm going to read, and I have a copy of that at work. And the next one is a book by Claire Mackintosh called Let Me Lie. Now Claire Mackintosh is an author, this is her third book. Basically all of her front covers look exactly the same, so you may be forgiven for thinking you might have read this book already. The first one was called I Let You Go, which I really enjoyed it. I can't even tell you much about it because the twist in it is really good, but part of it is set in Wales, and the description, it wasn't just like an ordinary crime novel for me. The description in it was just wonderful, and I really found like myself transported to Wales. Like when I was reading it, I really loved it. However, the second book that I read by her, I See You, I really didn't get on with very well. It was about one woman saw a picture of herself in a newspaper under a sort of like advertisement, and she had to work out what it was, and basically it was a system had been set up where you could stalk people, and it was allowing you to stalk people because this person got this train at this time and blah blah blah. And yeah, I didn't really like the book. I thought it was, I didn't think it was anywhere near as good as I Let You Go. But Let Me Lie, I feel quite excited about, and I'm also going to the Lush Book Club in March, and Claire Mackintosh will be there, so that'll be really fun because it'll be like a sort of interview thing going on with Anna James, who also has a booktube channel. She interviews, and yeah, and then you get a Q&A session, so I feel like that'll be very interesting as well. So that is the book that I'm reading for my online book club, so very excited to read both of those. Now on to the big books that I'm keen to get to this month, as I've got a bit of leeway. So the first one is, and Mercedes will be so fucking pleased that I'm showing you this, is the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. So me and Mercedes, I've been saying to Mercedes, oh, let's buddy read this, and then keep forgetting to put it in my TBR and keep having other stuff going on. So this month, Mercedes, here it is, let's read it. This is a little tiny penguin. Oh no, it's not. It's a Faber one. Oh, I thought it was a little penguin. This is a little one, so it looks small, but the font is really, it's 613 pages, so although it looks quite small, because this is like a normal sized book, and look at how much smaller it is, it looks small, but it's really like, the font is really small and all over the page, so that is going to take me a bit of time, but I'm very much looking forward to this. I've not heard any bad things about it, but basically it's considered a modern classic, and it says here, told by the wife and 4 daughters of Nathan Price, a fierce evangelical Baptist who takes his family and mission to the Belgian Congo in 1959. This is the story of one family's tragic undoing and remarkable construction over the course of 3 decades in post-colonial Africa. So yeah, very much looking forward to that. Minnie's being very naughty with a box over there. The next one is not a massive book, but it's one that I'm really excited to read. It is A Trick to Time by Kit DeWall. This is actually out in March. Vintage Viking are publishing it. I listened to the audiobook of My Name is Leon 2 years ago by Kit DeWall, and absolutely loved it. It was one of my favourite books of that year, and I still to this moment cannot believe that I didn't include it in my favourite books of this year, because it's really stayed with me and the audio was just wonderful. This I'm so excited about. It's set in the 70s in Birmingham, and it follows an Irish girl who on her first night living in Birmingham goes out and meets an Irish boy, and she meets William, a charming Irish boy with an easy smile and an open face. They get together, and then something happens which is tragic and tears them apart, and then you are hearing it from decades later when Mona, the main character, is talking about what had happened to tear them apart. So I love Kit DeWall's writing. I love books with Irish people in. I just feel like this is going to be super good, and I'm really looking forward to this. This might be one of the first ones that I start reading once I've done the old big mop up. The next one is a Sarah Waters book. It is The Paying Guests. Minnie's being so naughty. She's got the sleeve that my lighting thing goes in, and she's just sort of like jumping on it and then running away. Anyway, this is The Paying Guest by Sarah Waters. This is like a second-hand copy I got from the volunteers desk at work. I have read one Sarah Waters book, Tip in the Velvet, which I adored. Last year during the autumn readathon, I started reading The Little Stranger, but I for some reason or another, and I really feel like I will go back to that book and enjoy it, I just didn't get into it. This is a big book. This is almost 500 pages, might even be over 500 pages. It is over 500 pages, it's 595 pages. This is a big book, and it won the Bailey's Women's Prize for Fiction in 2015. Did it win it, or was it shortlisted? I think it won it. And yeah, I've just been meaning to get to it for a long time. These are sort of like historical fictions. This is set in 1922, and in a hushed South London villa, life is about to be transformed as genteel widow Mrs. Ray and her discontented daughter Frances are obliged to take in lodgers. Lillian and Leonard Barber, a modern young couple of the Clark class, bring with them gramophone music, colour fun and dangerous desires. So I feel very excited about that. The next one is a classic, and it is a massive one. It is Middlemarch by George Eliot. I got this for Christmas from David's mum. David's mum kindly always buys me one of these lovely cloth-bound classics from Penguin, and I love them. Yeah, and I haven't read Middlemarch. I don't know anything about it. All I know is that when I mentioned it in my Christmas haul, so many people were like, oh my god, Middlemarch is amazing. It's one of my favourite books ever. I really thought I was going to be really bored by it. It looked really daunting, which it bloody does, but I loved it. So I literally have no idea. I couldn't even tell you the name of someone in it. Let's have a flick open and see you the name of someone. Mr. Garth. He's someone. He's in there. But yeah, really, yeah. Be pleased to get back into a classic. The next one is one that was sent to me by the publisher at the end of last year. This came out on the 8th of February. It is The Great Alone by Kristin Hannah. I read The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah. I don't think it was last year. I think it might have been the year before. I read it for my book club at work. It was really, I really enjoyed it. It was sort of like, the front cover was not a front cover that I would enjoy. I remember it sort of like a bike leant up against the fence and swirly writing, and I was like, I am not going to like this. But because it was for book club, I read it, and I really enjoyed it. It was about two sisters and their role in the Second World War, and they lived they were French, and what they sort of got left behind and got involved with doing, and found it really interesting. This is set in Alaska in 1974. Also, we've got some awful weather coming up, so this will be a really good one to read because we've got some snow that's literally about to hit us at any time. And it says Cora Albright. Cora is a name that I see in so many books these days. It really is appearing everywhere. Her husband Ern, a recently returned Vietnam veteran scarred by the war, uproot their 13-year-old daughter Lenny to start a new life in Alaska. Utterly unprepared for the weather and the isolation, but welcomed by the close-knit community, they fight to build a home in this harsh, beautiful wilderness. So yeah, feel like that will be very good. And just judging on how much I enjoyed The Nightingale, I've got high hopes for that. Tea break. Oh, that's lovely. And then the last two, I've got a volunteer who comes and works with us on a Monday in my office, and she's ever so sweet. And her name's Val, and she's lent me 2 books recently, and I haven't read either of them. Firstly, because January was just, she lent them to me just before Christmas, and firstly because I was like reading all my Christmas books. Then it was February, and I must read these this month and return them to her because she keeps saying, oh, how did you get on with those books? And I'm like, I will tell you. The first one was My Absolute Darling by Gabrielle Tallant. Val did not enjoy this book. She could not get on with it, but her daughter wants to read it, so she's keen to get it back off of me if people are interested in what Val thought. She just said she couldn't get into it. It's about a young girl called Turtle, excuse me, who's 14, and she knows the use of every gun on her wall. The chaos is coming, and only the strong will survive it. That her daddy loves her more than anything else in the world, and that he'll do whatever it takes to keep her with him. So yeah, I've seen a lot of this on BookTube, but I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, I'm going to read this, but I don't feel like I've seen many reviews of it. So yeah, and then the last one is one that I'm excited, and this is very cute. It's got a little note that Val's written on me. Excuse me. Lauren, as promised, can I please have it back after you've read it, as Charlotte wants to read it. That's her daughter. And this is, I'm so sorry. This is Manderley Forever, The Life of Daphne du Maurier by Tatiana de Rosny. I have not read anything about Daphne du Maurier's life. I'm very excited to read about it because I hear she had quite the stonker of a life. And this is a biography of her with some lovely, oh my God, that house is beautiful. Ferryside, the house of Gerald du Maurier, built in Fowey, Cornwall in 1926. Today, Daphne's son, Christian Browning, lives there with his family. Look at that gorgeous house. So yeah, this is a biography of her life, and I'm really interested to hear what Daphne du Maurier's life's about. So that are the books. Those are the books that I'm planning on reading in the month of March. What are you guys planning on reading? This is the longest ever TBR. I don't think I've ever done a TBR. At the moment, we're clocking in at 20 minutes and 19 seconds, guys. So I do apologise. Well done if you've made it this far. Let me put that bit of hair backward to where it belongs. Hope you all have a lovely Sunday. I am today off to Harry Potter and the History of Magic exhibition in London. My sister and I got it for my dad for his Christmas present. We are excited about it. It's the last day. of the exhibition before it tours, and I'm really worried that the merchandise is going to be low on the ground. I hope they've still got quite a lot of merchandise going on there, and then we're going to have a lovely day sort of wandering around London. I've got a few little places I want to take them, Foyles being one of them, because my dad and sister have never been to Foyles and I feel like they will both love it. So blah blah blah, hope you have a lovely Sunday, and let me know what you're reading in the month of March, and I will see you all again soon for another booktube video.